Hi, I'm Dominique Elise. Welcome to the Next Come Up Show. Today we have a special guest. He's a 33rd degree Freemason. We'll be discussing a lot of subjects such as the truth, the rumors, and controversy related to entertainment. Please welcome to the show Mr. Cliff Jacobs.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of your program.
Thank you for coming. It's going to be a long show.
It'll go by quickly, I'm sure.
I know. I have so many questions. I was so excited to do it today. So we're going to start by asking you, what does Freemasonry mean?
Freemasonry is the world's oldest and largest fraternity. We trace our origin back to the founding of the Grand Lodge of England, which was founded in the year 1717. A group of lodges got together and decided to form a Grand Lodge. Now let me explain that. In any country, there's what you call a Grand Lodge, which is the overarching authority within that jurisdiction. So in the United States, there are 50 states, so there are 50 Grand Lodges that serve as the ultimate authority of Freemasonry in that state. So what happened in England in 1717, a group of lodges got together to form a Grand Lodge. Now Freemasonry had to be in existence prior to that in order for the Grand Lodge to be formed. So really we trace our origin back at least to about the 11th century, where there's a manuscript or poem called the Regis manuscript, and it speaks about Freemasonry in the time of King Athelstan, who actually ruled during the 10th century. So it is the oldest and largest fraternity in the world. It's open to men. It is a fraternity. There are women Freemasons, but I'm sure we'll talk about that a little later. And it doesn't matter what your race, your nationality, your religion, anyone can be a Freemason if you pass the standards that we have set up for admission. Oh,
really? What are the standards?
Well, that you have to be a good person, a man of good repute. You have to be of lawful age, which now is 19 or 18 or 19. Used to be 21. And you have to be of good reputation. We do background checks. We investigate.
Really?
Our motto is that we take good men and make them better. We don't take individuals who are have problems and try to build them up to be good. We start with the best of the best, and then we try to make them even better.
Oh wow!
We do a lot of charitable work where we help those who are less fortunate, the downtrodden, as you would say. But so we do a lot of charity, but as far as membership is concerned, you have to come in of being of sound reputation, because you have to uphold the tenets of the fraternity, and that's very important to us.
Is it considered a cult?
It's not a cult, it's a fraternity. And let me make this really clear. Some people think that it's some kind of religion. It's not. Freemasonry is not a religion. There's no, there's no sacrament. There's no plan for salvation. It's a moral fraternity, a moral society, where we try to take, again, good men and make them better. It doesn't conflict with any religious beliefs or your social or civil responsibilities. It is a fraternity. A cult? No. I mean, we're not even a secret society. We might be a society with secrets, but we're not a secret society. So if we were a secret society, you wouldn't even know that I was a Mason.
Exactly.
Our buildings are clearly marked. Our meetings are sometimes printed in newspapers. So, we can't be a real secret society. There are secret societies that you don't know about, but Freemasonry, I would argue, is not a secret society.
So how long you've been involved?
Me personally, actually, this year, last month, June, was my 30th anniversary. So I've been a Mason for 30 years.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
I joined when I was, 34, so that tells you how old I am now.
So we talk about requirements.
Uh-huh.
So how you guys choose people also, like selected, like do you really, it has to be perfect like bio about themselves or?
No, first of all, we don't recruit, you know, by our constitution and by the
Oh, okay.
constitution of most Grand Lodges, we actually cannot ask someone to join. The person who's interested has to step forward and make their intention or desire known. So we have a slogan that says, to be one, ask one. I can't ask you, but you have to ask me.
Oh, okay.
Some men go their entire lives not becoming Masons because they don't realize that they have to be the one to ask.
So you guys don't preach and say,
We don't recruit, you know, we don't go out and hand out pamphlets
Yeah.
and say, hey, join us. No, you have to be the one to step up and say, I want to be in this organization. Some branches of Freemasonry, they'll make you ask 3 times. So you ask the first time, they pretty much ignore you. You ask a second time, they ignore you again. And then the third time, that's when they'll hand you what we call a petition, which is just another way of saying application for you to join. But the burden of becoming a member is on the individual to step forward and ask. But then after that, you know, there's a process. Their application has to be read out loud in the lodge. 3 Masons are assigned to basically interview the potential candidate. And, you know, we want to know that, you know, that they are of good repute. We'd like to meet the other members of the family.
Oh, really?
Yes, because if you are a Freemason and you're married or you have a girlfriend, and we come to your home to visit, and if you know if your wife has bruises or something, then that's a non-starter. Because if you're someone who, you know, if you abuse the members of your family, if you beat your wife, if you do things like that, we don't want you as a member. So we, you know, as they say, we want to know how you're living, you know. Or the other thing is, Freemasonry is not free. So there is a financial responsibility that goes along with being a Freemason. It's not, you know, it's not exorbitant, it's not over the top, but there are financial responsibilities. You have your initiation fee and you have your dues. And depending on what lodge you belong to, it can, you know, it can cost, you know, like anything else. So we want to visit the Mason initially in his home.
Okay.
And let the other members of the family know what the organization is about. We don't like if men are going to use Freemasonry as an excuse to get away from the family.
Okay.
Or I'm going to a Masonic meeting and meanwhile they're off doing something else.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that the individual is on the up and up. And after that, if the investigating committee finds them to be worthy of admission, they go back to the lodge, they report on the candidate as being favorable, and that's when the process begins. Now, there's still other opportunities along the way. If someone objects to that individual, they can, because you have to be balloted upon. You take a vote.
Okay. You take a vote.
And if someone, you know, what, as we say, blackball you, using a black ball as opposed to a white ball, then you can't proceed any further.
But does it happen? So let's say like I'm learning about it, right? I know like you have to be a good man, and then everything has to be so-called perfect.
Right.
But if someone, you investigate that person, everything appears to be good, and then someone else come out of nowhere and say, oh, you Freemason now, and then that happens, somebody could just make a phone call and say, hey, I don't think he's a good candidate because he did that and that before.
Well, you know what, I'll give you a real scenario. I was a member of a lodge. It was like a second or third lodge that I joined because they needed help. And the master of the lodge was trying to bring in a lot of individuals, but there was a big question mark about the way he was going about it. So somebody decided to look into the master of the lodge's background, and he had been arrested twice for gun possession and drug possession under a different name. So that was not indicated on his initial application. And if you don't reveal these things on your initial application, that's grounds for being expelled, and he was.
Oh, wow.
So, yes, you can be a Mason, you can come in and be a member for a long time, but you can also be expelled. You can be brought up on charges because we have our own Masonic tribunal where if you do something inappropriate, there is a commission, a trial commission, and we sit in judgment of this individual, and you can be expelled from the fraternity. Sometimes you're you might violate some of the principles of the fraternity itself, or you could get arrested outside in the civilian world, which automatically will expel you from the fraternity. So, real quickly, a Mason had embezzled some money from a lodge, over $1 million, end up funding terrorists in the Middle East. We caught up with them, and I guess they arrested him, but he was also expelled from the fraternity. But if you, there was a brother Mason who was visiting a lodge in Baltimore, and he got into a very ugly argument with his wife at a public event. So the Grand Master of Maryland picked up the phone and called the Grand Master of New York and said, hey, one of your members was down here and acted in a way that we thought was inappropriate. Grand Master of New York got a trial together and suspended him for being, he didn't break civilian law, but he broke a Masonic code.
Oh, okay.
Okay, by being disrespectful to his wife in the way that he was. So it's like, that's conduct unbecoming a Mason. You have to go.
So basically, you could have a little chance. Like if you do something really minor, you don't necessarily have to be expelled, but they could give you a warning or something like that.
Because sometimes there are minor disputes between Masons. One of respect, or he disrespected me, and one member of a lodge didn't like the way the master had made a decision, and he invited him down on the sidewalk to finish the discussion man to man, so to speak. And that's not cool. You don't want to say to another Mason, let's take this down to the street and work it out, using our fists. So we try to work things out, verbally without suspensions, but if it gets to a point where we have to, then we have to.
Okay, there's a question that people wanted to ask
me.
Can women join?
Yes and no. Basically in Freemasonry, there are Masonic bodies that are what we called, let's say they're legitimate, and the others we call them clandestine, which means they're not really legitimate. So Freemasonry is basically an organization for guys.
Oh, okay.
There is something called the Eastern Star, where women who might be the brother, mother, sister, wife of a Mason can join. But there are women who are actual Freemasons, and they've been around since the 1700s, 1800s.
Oh, really?
Okay, started in Europe primarily. So women can be Freemasons, and I know a number of women who are Freemasons.
But you were telling me that they're not as recognizable as
but
man.
Why
is that?
The male, because technically, Freemasonry it's like the difference between the difference used to be between the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts.
Okay.
The Boy Scouts was for boys and the Girl Scouts was for girls.
Okay.
Girls didn't become Boy Scouts. I mean, I know a lot of that has changed in the last 6 months. But so the idea of women being Freemasons was like, it was a little taboo. But the women that I know who are Freemasons, one, they are very, very serious about their Freemasonry.
Is it the same requirement, 21 and over?
Pretty much, yes,
okay.
for women. But they are extremely studious, and their process of becoming a Freemason is much more rigorous than it is for men. It takes you take there's 3 degrees basically.
Okay.
You take one a year, but then you have to write a research paper and present it. We don't do that.
Oh,
and it
wow.
has to be like a scholarly research
And then you
paper.
have to present it to the men's, or it's another, or in front of other women.
In front of other women, you know,
Okay,
in
it's
in
two
your
different
lodge.
things, separate them.
It's two separate
Okay.
things. And then after after you present the first paper, you have to, then you can take your second degree. Then you have to write another paper, and then after the third degree, another paper. So it's very, they're very studious, they're very serious, and in many cases, they know more about Freemasonry than the men do.
Does you see couples like that Freemasons?
Yes, in fact, I know a couple where both the husband and wife are Freemasons.
And they have kids and everything.
Well, this is probably like the second go around. They've had kids in the past,
Okay.
but the wife is a very active and high-ranking Freemason, and so is her husband, and they belong in different jurisdictions. Technically, the husband is not supposed to associate with her because we don't recognize them, but hey,
Oh,
that's his
really?
wife, so what are you going to
So
do?
you guys don't do like meetings, or let's say have a meeting, men's and women today.
No,
That never
no.
happened?
We have my particular obedience, which is the Grand Lodge of the State of New York, and we're located on 23rd Street and 6th Avenue in Manhattan. We have some events that are open to the public. Anybody can come. In fact, the producer of this program, Julie, attended one of our
Oh, really?
open events. But no, my obedience, as we call it, we don't have joint meetings with female Masons. We can't do that. I'm not even supposed to say that I know female Masons because.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
It's very taboo, like.
very taboo, kind of. But they're good people.
But when Julie attended, but she was actually with you guys. Actually, she was sitting somewhere like secretive, or just
No. It's an open event, open to the public. Anybody can come. You don't even have to be a Mason to be there.
Okay.
It's open to the general public. It's a sort of Easter Passover celebration called the Feast of the Paschal Lamb, and it's one of the rare opportunities where the public can come in and to see who we are and what we do. And the ceremony sometimes is so impressive that we get a lot of men in particular asking to join because they're like, wow, I want to be a part of this.
Oh, wow. But what are the benefits of becoming a Freemason?
Well,
What attracted to you? What attracted to you? When you
I'll try to answer that in two parts. I mean, the benefit with a lot of things, you get out of it what you put into it.
Okay.
If you join and you just want to expand your business contacts and you're looking at it from a what's in it for me point of view, probably you're not going to stick around very long because what you get out of it depends on what you put into it. I'm reminded of that famous quote by John F. Kennedy. His quote was, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what can you do for your country.
Yeah.
Ask not what Freemasonry can do for you, but what can you do for Freemasonry. My journey started with the death of my father in 1984, and I found a recording where he had been interviewed on the radio. He was a Scoutmaster, Boy Scouts, for over 20 years, and everybody in my neighborhood knew my father George as the Scoutmaster. That's who he was.
Is it here in New York, or?
Here in New York,
Okay.
in Harlem.
Okay.
And in the radio interview, he said that he found in scouting a greater sense of democracy than he could find anywhere else in America. For him, the Boy Scouts, that was democracy in action. And I was so impressed by this that I wanted something like that for myself. But I didn't want the responsibility of taking young men on hikes and away to camp. I watched my father do that, and sometimes, the responsibility was quite enormous. So from 1984 to 1988, I read everything I could get my hands on about, Freemasonry and Rosicrucians and the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, all these things, because I was searching. And the death of my father, I think, was an attempt for me to get a handle on my own spirituality and my own personal development as an individual. And so I stumbled across the Freemasons, and I decided that I would give that a shot. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And you came with an object. I hope the viewers could see it properly. Can you tell us what it is?
This is a gavel that you see on the table. It's based on a maul that someone who would be carving stone and had a chisel, and they would use this to either carve in the stone. But we use it as what we call a gavel, and it's used to control what happens in a lodge room. So if the master of the lodge, who's always seated, raps it twice, then all the officers stand at attention. If the master raps 3 times, then everyone rises, officers and sideliners alike. And then when the master hits it once, then everyone sits.
So what does that mean? Is it a warning or something that's about to happen, or is there good news, bad news? Like,
no, for example, a visiting dignitary may enter the room, and everyone should rise.
Okay.
So the master would go 1, 2, 3, and everyone in the room will stand up.
Okay.
There are times where there might be a discussion going on, and perhaps the discussion gets a little heated, it gets out of control. The master has the right to terminate that discussion by gaveling once. That means everybody, that's it, over, no more talking about it, it's done.
It happens before where you guys like bickering?
Oh, sure, it could get, depending on what you're talking about,
okay,
the discussion can become heated. The master is the absolute, he's the absolute power in the room.
Okay.
And what he says goes. And there's no discussion, and that's it. And he controls it with the gavel.
The master, does he has to be like more than 20 years experience, or it could be a random person after 5 years to become a master? Or he has to be like...
Well, excuse me. Basically, if you become an officer in the lodge, there's about maybe 9 to 12 chairs that you have to sit in before you can become a master. So you become an officer, but you're on the lowest end of the totem pole.
Okay.
And then you have to sit in all the seats. So by the time you've become a master, technically, you've been a Mason for 10 or 12 years.
Oh, okay.
And you understand what goes on. There have been situations where someone has come in, and within a year or 2, they become master of a lodge. But that's usually not a good thing.
Okay.
Because they're inexperienced, they don't know what's going on, they don't know how to run a lodge. And it's a disservice not only to the lodge, but to the individual.
Okay. So how many degrees are there in Freemason?
I'm so sorry.
Drink some water. Drink some water.
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
In my particular, what we call obedience,
Yeah.
and let me explain that. When I say obedience, before I go into the number of degrees, understand that Freemasonry grew up in America separate and not equal. In other words, going back to the 1700s, there was basically what we would call white or European Masonry, and there was African American Masonry. African Americans were not allowed basically to join white Freemasonry.
Oh, really?
Yes, they were separate and not equal. So here's what happened. African American man by the name of Prince Hall, who was a friend of George Washington, encouraged George Washington to run for the presidency. He had been initiated by a traveling lodge of Irish soldiers. And he realized that African American men couldn't be Masons because most of them had been born into slavery. One of the tenets of Freemasonry is you have to be a free man. Okay. And because most African American males in this country at that time were slaves, it precluded them from becoming Freemasons. So Prince Hall wrote to England, and he got a charter to start up a lodge here, and actually in Massachusetts. that initiated African American men into the fraternity. So that lodge was founded back in the 1700s and then is still in existence today. As it turns out, I'm the liaison between my Grand Lodge of New York and that particular lodge in Massachusetts. And so Masonry grew up separate and unequal, and for many years the white Masons didn't recognize the African American Masons. As it turned out, when I joined, I wasn't aware of this, so I actually joined the white Masons.
Oh.
And that's where I'm a member. I happen to be the liaison to the Prince Hall Masons of Massachusetts. So I'm kind of a rare bird in that I'm an African American Mason in white Freemasonry. And on top of that, I'm a 33rd in white Freemasonry. And there's only a handful of us African Americans who have that status. No, there are just over 2 million Masons in the United States. Probably there's only 2,000 who are 33rd, and there's probably less than 25 who are African American.
Oh wow!
So it's a small number.
Yeah.
But and that also answers the first part of your question. In that there are 33rd degrees in Freemasonry. The significance of that, you know, more than anything, it was that Jesus Christ died in the 33rd year of his life. So that's sort of the reference for why there are 33 degrees, because, you know, Jesus Christ in Christianity was crucified in the 33rd year of his life. So there is a spiritual connection there and a spiritual significance in becoming a 33rd degree Mason.
So you're the I rank now. You're the 33rd, so this is the last one.
That's the last one.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Basically, though, we like to say in Freemasonry, the highest degree is the 3rd degree. It takes 3 degrees to become a full-fledged Mason.
Okay.
Yes, there are degrees beyond the 3rd degree, but we think of them as it's more distance than height. You can go further, but you can't go higher.
Oh,
so
okay.
the idea is that when you become a 33rd, you've studied more, you've learned more, you have just done more. It doesn't make you better than anyone else. It just means that you have invested more of your time and energy to the fraternity.
Is your goal is to become a master?
Well, I've been the master of a lodge at least 3 times, 3.5 times.
Oh, okay.
I'm a past in the Scottish Rite. I'm a past thrice potent master, a past most wise master, a past commander-in-chief, a 33rd. I have a Livingston Award. I've done a lot in Freemasonry over the 30 years that I've been a member. But I think for me, the thing is just to see if I can be a better individual. And that process never stops. You know, we all have our shortcomings. We try to stay on the path. Sometimes we fall off the path. Then we get up and we get back on the path. And hopefully we don't fall so far off that it takes us a while to get back.
Okay.
So, you know, the whole idea is, I like to think of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution addresses the evolution of our physical bodies, how we became humans. But Charles Darwin doesn't address one's spiritual evolution. That is in our hands. So, and as far as we as human beings, we're probably not going to grow additional fingers or toes. So what's the next level of evolution for us? It's an internal evolution, not an external one. And Freemasonry helps the individual take that internal journey to become a better person.
Okay. What takes place during a lodge meeting?
You know, the number one focus of a lodge meeting is to initiate new members. So we have 3 degrees. We confer the 1st degree, the 2nd degree, and the 3rd degree. We give money to charity. We have lectures. We, as a lodge, may all agree to read a particular book. And then we might have a discussion about that particular book. But everything that centers in the lodge is geared towards increasing our knowledge and awareness of the fraternity and maybe other things related to the fraternity.
Oh, wow. So I think you might not say anything, but can you tell us about a secret, or why so many secrets as well?
Well, to be honest with you, the secrets that we have are very few in number. We have secret modes of recognition, a sign that we can make to someone. When we shake hands, we might shake hands in a very distinctive way to let that individual know that he's a member of the fraternity. So there's secret modes of recognition. Other than that, there really aren't, too many secrets, except maybe how much good we do in the world.
Yeah.
With over 2 million Masons in the United States, we give away as a fraternity $1 million a day to charity. So that's like every Mason, almost every Mason, every day gives $1 to charity. So if you got 2 million members and at least half of them are participating, that's a lot of money. So a lot of the secrets, I think, is related to the good that we do in the world.
Oh yeah, that people don't know.
That people don't know about.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, in many ways, that is the sort of the ultimate secret. So Freemasonry is again not so much a secret society, but perhaps a society with secrets. There are other groups in the world, on the planet, that are pretty much very secret, that most people don't know about. I mean, I could mention some of them, but you never see anyone wearing a ring or a lapel pin. You'd never know that they were a member of such orders, and most people have never even heard of them.
That's interesting. What is the VCL? Why you guys don't call it a Bible?
Well, again, Freemasonry is open to men of all faiths, whether it's, you're a Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, Jewish, Parsi, or Zoroastrian. You can be any faith and be a Mason. So we use the term volume of sacred law, VSL.
Oh, okay.
Now, volume of sacred law is basically a generic term that refers to all holy books, or any holy book. So if I say, Bible, then there might be perceived a bias towards Christianity. Or if I say, the Torah, if I speak of the Quran. So we say volume of sacred law, and that's whatever holy book you believe in. Because when you become a Mason, you have to take an oath on some holy book, but it's the holy book of your choice. So we say volume of sacred law, meaning basic a basic holy book. Even the word Bible, I like to, for me, the initials stand for basic instructions before leaving Earth. I like that, Bible, B-I-B-L-E, basic instructions before leaving Earth. And that's what any volume of sacred law is ultimately. So when the Masons meet, there must be a holy book on the altar at all times open. Some lodges have all the holy books because their members are Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, and Jewish. Some may just have the Holy Bible, but we respect all holy books, no matter what the religion.
And then anybody could come. It could be Christian.
Yes, absolutely.
Jewish, Muslim.
Yes.
Anybody's welcome.
Yes, even a Thelemite.
Oh wow.
And I mentioned Thelemite because you had asked off camera, I think about. I think Julie asked me about Aleister Crowley, and he created the religion of Thelema, which is considered to be a bona fide religion, although some people have some issues with it. But I know individuals who have taken their obligation or their oath on a book called the Book of the Law, which was written by Aleister Crowley.
Oh, that's
So.
interesting. I never knew that.
Mm-hmm.
So, why do some people classify Freemasonry with Satanism?
Okay. The easy explanation and the true explanation of that, one of the greatest Masonic historians and writers was a man named Albert Pike, who basically in the United States organized the 33 degrees of Freemasonry, particularly from the 4th degree to the 33rd degree. And he wrote a sort of magnum opus called Morals and Dogma, which basically is his intellectual understanding and revelation about all the degrees from the 1st degree to the 33rd degree. Albert Pike was a scholar and he was an intellectual. And we have a word that we use. It's called Lucifer. Okay?
Okay.
Now the root of it is Latin, and lucis means light. You know, so Lucifer is the bringer of light. You know.
Okay.
So when Albert Pike talks about Lucifer in very glowing terms, you know, people equate Lucifer with Satan, and that they're the same thing. But you know, intellectually, if you really understand what you're reading, they're not the same thing.
Oh.
So when the more conservative aspect of this country, when they read stuff like that, they say, "Oh, Lucifer, Freemasonry, Satanism, it's all the same," and they're not really understanding what Albert Pike was trying to get at by talking about so-called Lucifer, you know. And then Freemasonry, everything is based on light, you know, bringing someone to light, the light coming out of the darkness. And so it's because of really like one paragraph in one book by one individual, Albert Pike, that people mistakenly equate Freemasonry with Satanism, because they see Satan and Lucifer as being one and the same, and it's not the case.
Well, there's something new. I didn't know that either. So
yeah, it's that's a whole another discussion, you know, in terms of you know, good and evil, and a lot of the concepts that you know, the concepts of heaven and hell. You know, where did these concepts really come from? And but that's a whole other discussion.
Well, the subject is coming. I think people are waiting for that.
Okay.
What is the correlation between Freemason and the Illuminati?
Ah, the Illuminati.
Yes.
Those,
you know,
those
this is the question people are waiting for. A lot.
Well, there was an order of the Illuminati started in 1776, ironically, by a gentleman named Adam Weishaupt in Germany, or Bavaria at the time. That's why they are sometimes called the Bavarian Illuminati. They were separate and apart from Freemasonry, although Adam Weishaupt used the structure of Freemasonry as the skeleton for the Illuminati. So he basically patterned their order of, you know, how they're structured on Freemasonry. And he had actually written to George Washington, and, you know, he wanted George Washington to embrace the Illuminati, you know, philosophy. Now, the Illuminati, it wasn't a spiritual organization. It was really more of a political organization. Okay. And they were very anti-papist, which means they were very anti the Roman Catholic Church with the Pope as its head. And they were always seen to be conspiring to bring down the Catholic Church. Excuse me.
That's fine.
So, so the Illuminati really got a bad name, a bad reputation. You know, if you read some of the writings, if you read some of their rituals, and there is a book that was published last year called The Secret School of Wisdom, which contains all their initiation rituals, the first time ever in English, which is a fascinating read. You know, when you read about them, they really weren't so bad, you know, but they have become the the icon of conspiracy. You mentioned the Illuminati, and people,
especially when it's related to entertainment. Everything
is Illuminati.
Yes, everything.
I mean, even Tupac did a album called Killuminati or something like that. He put out, but they are the go-to guys for conspiracy.
Okay.
You know, if you're worrying, is there a secret government? If somebody is controlling the world, if someone's controlling the world's finances, you know, go down the list. It's always the Illuminati.
Why people are so obsessed? Like, it's like an obsession.
Because, you know, it's easy to make them the bad guys, because when something happens that you can't explain, and you can lay the blame at the feet of, you know, especially something like the Illuminati. Who are they? Where are they? We don't know. So they're perfect. They're the perfect scapegoat for everything that goes wrong in the world. You know, it's sort of what happened when terrorism became the new enemy. See, back in the day, it was communism, and communism had a name, a face, a country, a location. You know, it was Russia, it was China, it was Cuba. And if we could focus the attention of people on that foreign enemy, and we know who you are and we know where you are, then somehow that helped us feel safe. But when it became terrorism, terrorism doesn't have a particular name or country or face. It's everywhere. You know, and so like the Illuminati, they're everywhere. So, you know, you have to be on guard all the time, because, you know, where are the Illuminati? They're in Jay-Z's new album. They're in Tupac's album. They're in this movie or this movie, and, you know, and it's the eye in the triangle, and it's Beyonce. It's everywhere, you know. And I think it just makes folks feel warm and fuzzy to know that there's an enemy that has a name, and that enemy is the Illuminati, you know. So, but if you go back and really study them, I don't think they're that bad personally. Some people may not feel comfortable with me saying that, but I don't think I don't think that they were as bad as people make them out to be.
But what do you think so many people believe that Freemason and Illuminati has so much influence in the media?
I don't know why. I think you know, sometimes it's about the trappings. It's about symbols. You know, we see the eye in a triangle, and you know, everyone uses the eye. The logo for CBS is the eye. Yeah. If you look at the symbol for AOL, it looks like an eye in a triangle. When Time Warner was here, their logo is also an eye. You see that symbol. There was even a place called New World Coffee, and they used an eye in a triangle. So we see that. We see it on the dollar bill, on the back of the dollar bill, the eye in a triangle on the unfinished pyramid. So I think a lot of that gets associated with media-related corporations. Why? I don't know. It's in the logo. It's the same thing sometimes with the symbol of another symbol of freedom is the Statue of Liberty. Okay. We also see it in the logo for Columbia Pictures, which is usually a woman holding a torch, if you look at the logo for Columbia Pictures. And that's a whole other thing involving the goddess Venus, and, you know, the cult of the goddess and goddess worship, and the worship of female deities. You know, it's all kind of related, you know, because Venus is the morning star. It's the bringer of light, you know. So it kind of relates to Lucifer, because Lucifer means the bringer of light. So it's all kind of wrapped together. But I think the whole thing with the Illuminati is, again, you know, a lot of it comes from Hollywood and movies, you know, that make us think this way. You know, Jay-Z certainly, you know, he's always looking, you know, through the, you know, the eye in the triangle, and, and certainly with certain clothing that he wears that has certain quotes, you know, particularly from Alice Crowley.
And certain videos also as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, people in the entertainment business, they do that because it sells.
Yeah.
You know, it's a great marketing tool.
That creates a buzz.
Sure.
Everything is marketing. You're right.
Right. It's you know, in the James Bond films, his nemesis basically throughout the series is an organization called Spectre, and they wear a particular ring that has an octopus, you know, on it, you know, because their tentacles are everywhere. They control everything. So they think of the Illuminati as being an international organization that controls everything. They are the puppet masters. But that's not true. Is there an order of Illuminati or the Illumined ones that exist today? Yes, there is. But they have no relation to the original organization that was founded in 1776.
Oh wow, I'm learning so much from you.
So there is such an order. They're in existence. They're alive, but they're very different from what the Illuminati was originally designed and set up for.
Do you think, is there any validity to the rumored celebrity family sacrifices, like they say Jennifer Hudson, or let's say Kanye West, his mother died, and then Jennifer Hudson, her entire family, like her brothers, like son, whatever.
I don't.
Brother died, yeah.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that these celebrate. That's just made up stuff.
Okay.
I don't believe that that celebrities are doing that. However, I will say this. You know, there are a lot of occult. This is the first time we've used this word in this interview.
Yeah.
Occult means hidden. Occult doesn't necessarily mean something evil, but it can. Occult just means you don't know about it. It's hidden. There are a lot of occult groups out there engaged in all manner of things. And I would not be surprised to learn that when we see the missing children reports that pop up on you know, the evening news. You know, have you seen so-and-so? She's been missing since. I wouldn't be surprised if some of that is not related to some of these really dangerous cults that exist out there, and that might engage in some activity. I was living in Atlanta, Georgia, at the time all those children were being murdered in Atlanta. This is around 1979, 80. And it was all these young, mostly African-American kids that were being murdered. And I always thought that it might have been related to some cult. The young African-American male that they arrested for that, somehow I just didn't believe that he was responsible, that I believe that somebody else was actually responsible for that. Because I do think that there are some very, very dangerous cults out there engaging in, you know, what we call the black arts, very negative, dangerous practices that do engage in that kind of behavior. Yeah, I think that does happen, you know. As much as we think that that's just something that happens in movies, you know, no, sometimes it does happen.
Wow, that's unfortunate.
Yes, it is, actually. And I think, you know, there are spiritual groups who are out there who are actively engaged in, you know, whether it's prayer, meditation, or other things to combat, you know, those evil forces that are at work in the world. You know, sometimes people get the wrong idea when they hear the word Wicca or witches. You know, witches don't do that. You know, they don't engage in that. They're actually just very spiritual people practicing an old form of spirituality. And since I touched on that subject, I mean, the counterparts to Wicca, or so-called witchcraft, would be the religions that came to the New World from Africa. Started out in Africa as the Yoruba religion. Excuse me, but When it landed in the Caribbean, it became voodoo in Haiti, or Santeria in Puerto Rico, or cumbia, or candomblé in Brazil. But these are what they call the old time religions, the religions that were pre-Christian, long before Christianity came aboard.
Okay.
And they're not evil, they're just misunderstood by the mainstream because we don't take time to really understand, other cultures.
Yeah.
We're so fixated. We're okay, it's got to be Christian, it's got to be Catholic, and that's it. And it doesn't acknowledge the existence of other forms of worship, especially those forms that are pre-existent to Christianity. And Christianity itself is made up of things that are older. All the images of the Virgin holding the baby Jesus are basically based on images, Egyptian in origin, of Isis holding Horus. That's where the image of the Virgin and Child comes from. So even Christianity has borrowed from other religions and before it became Christianity.
Wow. Could you name some famous celebrity Masons?
Oh, celebrity Masons! I can name a bunch of them. We have Clark Gable, Peter Sellers. We have Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Nat King Cole. We have let's see, Mozart and Beethoven were also Freemasons. From the political field, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, most of the signers of the Declaration, John Hancock, we've had Simon Bolivar, we've had the Marquis Lafayette, we had Juarez in Mexico, we've had Danton in France during the French Revolution, Kossuth from Poland, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Jose Rizal, who's the liberator of the Philippines, Garibaldi and Manzini, who are the liberators of Italy. Who else? Phil Collins from the group Genesis is a Freemason. Richard Dreyfuss is a Freemason. And what's his name? Kramer from Seinfeld is a 33rd degree Freemason. Chuck Schumer is a Mason. I know because I slipped him the secret handshake one time and he gave it back to me.
Oh, wow.
So those are some of the people right off the top of my head who were Freemasons. Buzz Aldrin, first man to walk on the moon, was a Freemason. And I mean, Red Skelton, the comedian, is a Freemason. There's so many, in fact, Freemasonry permeates every faction of American society that you can almost say that this country was a Masonic experiment. Because no other country have there been so many founding fathers or founding individuals who were members of one organization as they were in America. So basically, if you ask me, Freemasonry was, America is a Masonic country. It's based on, and all those ideas in the Constitution and in the Declaration were pre-existing in Masonic lodges, from, the 15th century, at least. These were, and those ideas were incorporated into American society. So Freemasonry is older than the founding of America, and I think those principles were just incorporated into this new world. And Francis Bacon, the English philosopher in the 1600s, wrote a book called The New Atlantis. And in it, he talks about, this brotherhood, blah, blah, blah. And if you read Francis Bacon's book, it's basically the blueprint for America. And that's what we have today. So Freemasonry in America is almost one and the same.
Oh, wow. That's a lot. They said also that Masons are very responsible for any position in the government. Do you think it's true? Do you think that they have to become a Mason to have the position that they have right now?
No, and I'm glad because I'm going to hook on to the previous question and continue. with the fact that there have been 14 American presidents of the United States who were Freemasons.
Okay.
The last official Freemason who was a president of the United States was Gerald Ford.
Okay.
But Harry Truman, Franklin Roosevelt, as well as Teddy Roosevelt, George Washington, Andrew Jackson, and a number of them in between, totaling 14. Most elected officials who are Freemasons, they tend to keep that private, and because the people of this country sometimes they love to believe in conspiracy theories.
Yes.
So a lot of them keep their Masonic membership quiet, and because they don't want all that controversy and to come out. So no, you can, probably if you advertise your membership too much, you probably wouldn't get elected. So most of them keep that relatively quiet. And no, two pertinent questions. Barack Obama is not a Mason, nor has he ever been, and neither is Donald Trump. They're not, because if they were Masons, we would know about it. It's kind of hard to be a Freemason without somebody knowing about it, because you have to belong to a lodge somewhere on the planet Earth. So the idea that no, Barack isn't, although he'd make a great Mason, and if I had a chance to kind of give him a nudge to join, I would. And I would not do that for Donald Trump. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
I think a lot of people will agree with you.
He wouldn't get past the front door. But that's my opinion. And I must say, I should have said it at the top of the show, but the opinions expressed here are mine and mine alone, and does not represent the opinion of my Grand Lodge. So just want to be on the record for that.
How's being a Freemason affect your personal life and your professional life as well?
It's been absolutely beautiful, especially when I'm out on the road. I've visited lodges in England, and I've gone to lodges in Belize and Central America. It's like being the American Express card. I'm welcomed wherever I go. So if I'm traveling, the first thing I do is look up where the local lodge is, and then I stop by. I was in, I think it was in Montreal, and saw a Masonic lodge. Said, "Oh, I'm going to go back later in the evening." Stopped by, they invited me in. I proved to them that I was a Mason, of course, because you have to do that.
Yeah.
Excuse me, and I hung out with them all night long, and I had a wonderful time. So it's nice to belong to something when you're away from home. You have a friend everywhere. Okay. I could go to Japan, Spain, Russia, Africa, and look up the Masonic Lodge. I can go anywhere in the world, and that's one of the beautiful things about it. Freemasonry has helped me in my workday life, in as much as my workday life has helped me as a Freemason.
Thank you so much. We have no more time, but we learned so much from you, and I hope you could come back.
Anytime.
And this is Dominique Elise for the next Come Up Show. Until next time.